Hello, and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. Today's podcast number 2046. The topic is nutrition, and the title is The Greatest Drug for Strength and Muscle Growth. Ooh. One of my new clients, he's a personal trainer and competitive powerlifter, and he wants to get into doing men's classic physique, which is essentially bodybuilding, where there's a little more emphasis on the aesthetics rather than just being super massive. He likes that idea, the goal of it. He wants to learn the process of that, and he believes it'll help him for promoting his business. Now, he reached out because he has lost weight over the past 8 months, but his strength and muscle growth has plateaued. In the initial service request for the consultation and getting everything up and running, he wrote the following, among other things, but this is part of what he wrote. I've been able to lose weight. I've cut from the 242-pound class down to 220 pounds, but I feel my strength and muscle growth are plateaued. I realize cutting 20 pounds while keeping my strength and muscularity is probably good for most people, but I believe you would understand that I want more and that I probably could achieve more. I was wondering if I could work with you for nutrition and training programming, but also supplementation. I want to take my goals as far as I can, and I feel that I've hit a plateau and I'm ready for help. And he put help in quotation marks. So I'm assuming that refers to the drugs. And I have talked with him since, and that is exactly what he meant. But when I initially read it, I was like, oh, okay, that's the help. So he said, I want to learn through the process, but I don't want to waste time doing it on my own now that things have seemed to plateau. And one specific question he wanted to address in our initial Zoom consultation was, what are the best drugs for strength and mass? I want to make sure I'm maximizing what I can through this process. Now, I do help people who take extra supplementation. I've helped people get drug-tested pro cards and compete in drug-tested powerlifting. I've also helped people who can take whatever they want to take and compete in those federations and divisions and categories. So looking at somebody's overall approach, before we would consider drugs, we would want to, and I'm saying drugs as in like illegal drugs, like quote-unquote steroids, but that's a ridiculously large umbrella term. There's a lot of things underneath that term. But we would look at nutrition, we'd look at training, we'd look at legal supplementation, we'd look at sleep, stress management, all these. You'd look at like every single freaking thing you could think of, every damn thing you could think of, before you would consider adding illegal drugs. Not only because the legal issues, but also there would be to some degree a health trade-off. Now, you can get blood work done, and there's a lot of approaches you do to control supplementation. You take proper doses and all these things, but there's going to be some degree of trade-off in the sense of there is a lot of I don't know about a lot, but there's an understanding of the long-term effects of various types of illegal supplementation. But even knowing if something, this could be deemed one of the healthier things to do. And if I check blood pressure, if I check my, blood work regularly and make sure my levels are within, health appropriate standards, can you do it, quote unquote, healthy in the sense of you're doing it with an attention to your health? Yes. Are there going to be absolutely no negative effects whatsoever? No. I mean, you're injecting or ingesting a compound into your body. Your body's going to respond to that, and there's going to be some pros and cons. Just like taking any medication, there's a benefit to it, and then there's some side effects to it. So steroids would be no different in the sense that there would be some benefit and there would be some side effects. Now, when I looked at their nutrition, what was interesting was it was way off. Now, this isn't actually uncommon for personal trainers. Over half my clients are personal trainers. Part of the problem is they know too damn much, but they have a hard time filtering out what is more significant or what's more important than other things. So they'll know so much that they can justify what looks like from the outside, be like, hey, what the hell are you doing? The cart before the horse kind of things. But in their mind, they're analyzing the cart, they're analyzing the horse, they're analyzing the road the surface is on, the type of wheels, on the cart. They're overanalyzing everything, and they have a hard time kind of keeping priorities straight. So looking at their nutrition, they weigh right now currently 220, well, when we started, they weighed 220 pounds. They had dieted down from 242. Their current caloric intake at that time of reaching out was only 2,200 calories. So it was only 10 times body weight. And they're a personal trainer. Like, they're up on their feet all day. They're training really hard 4 to 5 times a week. They're moving a lot of plates, moving a lot of weights for clients, and they're only consuming 10 times body weight. That is very, 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 very low. Very low. So he had gotten himself to 220 pounds by cutting calories. His body adjusted its caloric output, like how much calories it would put towards non-essential processes. So much so that it was holding weight at body weight times 10, even though he was even though he was that active. So his metabolism had adjusted to really reduce its caloric usage. And it was starting to prioritize body fat. And it was trying to fight for homeostasis rather than fight for a progression. It wasn't being fueled for progress, it was being underfueled to barely maintain. So his body was fighting for maintenance, which is why he struggled and everything plateaued, because that was what the body was fighting to try to do, because it was so underfed that there was no way in hell it was going to actually make progressions. There weren't enough calories and nutrients coming in for progression. It was barely enough for maintenance. Then his protein was 220 grams, which is actually pretty good. However, that was way too high of a percentage of his overall calories. So 220 grams of protein would be 880 calories. Then if you think of the percentage of that of a 2,200 calorie diet, that is 40%. Typically, protein percentage is going to do best for body composition around 25 to 33%, so around a third. So 40% is really high for a protein percentage. And what that means is that he was underfeeding himself carbs and fats. And carbs and fats are our energy. Carbs and fats are what his body would be using to fuel the process of change. Now, protein is the material that our body builds muscles with, but it still needs the energy to build the muscles. So you can have, bricks to build a brick house, but who's going to put those bricks into a house, like shape? You'd have to have workers. You'd have to hire workers to pick up the bricks and put them into the shape of a house. So he was having all the protein. He had all the bricks to build muscle, but he didn't have any workers. He didn't have enough carbs and fats in order to fuel the process of the muscle being built. Now, that's a very simplified version of it, but that's essentially what was happening. So I wrote back to him and I said, hey, let's add what supplements will help, but let's stay natural, meaning not illegal drugs. You said you truly want a pro card and an elite total. So pro card would be the aesthetic competitions, like the bodybuilding type shows. That would be kind of like a peak goal for that. And then in powerlifting, an elite total is it's a very rare achievement, and that's kind of like a marker of success in powerlifting. So he wants a very rare and significant marker of success in aesthetic competitions, and he wants a very rare and kind of a prestigious marker of success for strength competition. So he wants both aesthetics and strength. I said there's so much room to improve in nutrition and training and within legal supplementation. So let's max those out before we consider illegal drugs. You had asked what was the best drug for strength and muscle growth. The answer is food. The greatest drug for strength and muscle growth is food. So many people that I work with mismanage appropriate caloric intake and appropriate protein intake, and then the timing of those things. They're almost always eating too little of calories because the majority of people I work with, they've gone through a lot of initial diet attempts and phases and things. Now, I do work with people who are brand new to everything, but usually they'll try all the shortcuts before they come and talk to me, and then I'm going to tell them, hey, I'm going to make it as simple as possible, but you actually have to do some work. They're going to first try all the simple stuff. But there are, it's not that it's like, in my mind, all you have to do is say, okay, per 24 hours, I'm going to eat X number of calories. Rather than adding it up per 24 hours, which can be hard to remember at the end of the day what I have for breakfast, let me just add up every 6 hours. So that's 3 times a day. I'm just going to say, hey, what did I have in the last 1 or 2 meals in the last 6 hours? Did I have enough calories? Did I have enough protein? Then the next 6 hours. Did I have enough calories? Did I have enough protein? Then based on the first 2 units of 6 hours, you know what to do with the last 6 hours of the day, the last 1 or 2 meals of the day. So that way you hit your 24-hour mark of calories and protein. You want to consume carbs and fats from relatively healthy sources as defined as things that are not, like you want your saturated fats ideally to not come from a bunch of fried food. And when we consider fat intake, saturated fats should be around a third of your total fat intake. If we think of carbohydrates, we're going to break it down into just complex carbs like regular carbs versus sugars. And sugars we usually try to keep under about 60 grams a day. So you're looking at, okay, I'm going to try to consume a certain number of calories every 6 hours. Out of the fats that I have, make sure if I have like 1/3 is saturated fat, but when I have saturated fats, it's okay. It's actually healthy and totally good to have saturated fat. I just don't want to have it from crappy food. Just like if I'm going to have carbs, I don't want to have carbs from crappy food, just really sugary, junky stuff. So I'm going to hit my calorie targets. I'm going to eat carbs and fats based on whichever one I want and whichever types of foods I like. So it could be potatoes, pasta, rice, beans, vegetables, breads, bagels. That's all fine. Unless you have a specific condition like celiac disease, then you're obviously not going to have bread. But you can have any of those carbs. For fats, it can be animal fats. It can, if you're okay with animal products. It can be plant-based fats, like nuts, or animal products like cheeses or meats, or there's just anything under the sun. Oils, you can have any oil you want, like whole eggs, dairy products. You can have really any fat sources that are relatively healthy, any carb sources that are relatively healthy. You just want to make sure you have enough calories, enough protein throughout the day, and that's it. I mean, it's, in my mind, that is much easier than, okay, I have to avoid all carbohydrates. Or, I can't eat more than 40 grams of fat in a day. Well, what happens sometimes if you limit your fat intake is you're going to be hungry more often and you're going to end up overeating. Or if you try to limit all carb intake, you're probably just going to eliminate foods you actually enjoy. You're going to eat a lot of fats, and maybe that doesn't digest well for you. Maybe it brings in a lot of cholesterol, and you already have cholesterol problems. There's a lot of challenges and negative consequences when we pick more black and white structures that say I can have this but not that, versus a structure that says, I can have this and that. I just got to keep everything in moderation. It sounds boring, and the ambiguity, the grayness of it, meaning it's not black and white rules, can sometimes make people feel a little confused at first. But in general, it's a much healthier approach because you get to eat a variety of foods. You get to eat what's available to you in all times, even when you're traveling or active or at someone's house, or maybe you didn't go grocery shopping yet, so you have just miscellaneous crap around the house. You have a lot more freedom to adjust to match life. Whereas when you have black and white diets, everything has to revolve around the diet, and that's just absolutely 100% not how life works for overwhelmingly most of people. Even the personal trainers I work with, life can't revolve around their food. They got bills to pay, so they're going to take a client at an hour when maybe they would have ideally loved to have taken that time to eat, but hey, I got to pay bills. I got to make some money, so I'm going to take that client at that time. So what we're looking for nutrition-wise is we want to first make sure that we're eating enough food, enough overall calories. A typical recommendation would be body weight times 13 to 15. Now, this would be based on activity level. If you're moderately active, which might be, say, 5,000 steps a day, if you think of like a step count, where your job has some movement to it, but you're not hiking, a marathon every day. That's probably going to be around body weight times 13, plus or minus a bit. If you're very active, you're on your feet a lot, you have a very mobile job, probably closer to body weight times 15, plus or minus a little bit. If you're very sedentary, less than 2,000 steps a day, you really just sit all day, then probably more along body weight times like 11 to 12, plus or minus a little bit. But that will give you like a general range. So for this client, he needed to be upwards of body weight times 13 to 15, not body weight times 10. So we took his calories from 2,200 up to 2,800 to 3,300. So he is that 500 calorie range, from 2,800 calories up to 3,300 calories. On days he doesn't feel as hungry or he doesn't feel like he's as active, he can eat on the lower end of that range. On days he's more active, he feels more hungry, he can eat towards the higher end of that range. But that is going to help him have enough fuel to make the strength progressions, the physical adaptations for strength, and the physical adaptations for muscle growth. That's going to help. Now, is his weight going to go up? Partially, yes, because he'll be storing more glycogen, and he's going to be building more muscle tissue. But also, in part, no, because we're also improving the proper timing of his food, which is actually going to reduce his need for body fat storage. So that'll allow him to reduce body fat storage, which actually allows him to look leaner. So our proper protein, and that's going to be, depending on somebody's training intensity and frequency, would be body weight times 0.8 to 1.2. Assuming they're a powerlifting, you're training pretty often with weights. 3, 4, 5 times a week with weights. You're probably going to be around body weight times 0.8 to 1.2. 1.2 is pretty high, but some clients go up there and they're okay there. So we have his calorie range right now between 200 to 240 grams. So his body weight minus 20, his body weight plus 20, somewhere in that range. So he has a 500 calorie range, 2,800 to 3,300, and he has a 40 gram of protein range from 200 grams to 240 grams. And then the big change we made was timing. Right now, he was eating pretty much all of his food at the end of the day. And that was absolutely not good for workout performance. It wasn't great for producing maximal stimulus change from his training. It wasn't great for controlling body fat levels, water storage levels. So he was looking like crap and feeling like crap, not only because he was under eating, but also because he was mistiming his food. What we want to do in the changes that we made, and what I would recommend you make, is to energy load, meaning when you consume your carbs and fats, load more towards pre-workout. But load your protein more towards post-workout. So for this client, they train early afternoon. Their first meal is at 6:30 in the morning, then around 9 a.m., and then at 1 p.m. they have a pre-workout drink that kind of bleeds into drinking it during the workout. 3 o'clock, they have a post-workout meal, and then 7 p.m., they have their last meal of the day. So first meal, 6:30 in the morning, we're going to focus on carbs and protein. Now, carbs and protein, we're going to keep fats low because I actually want the carbs to digest quickly into the body. We actually do a lot of hydration at the morning as well. So he consumes creatine along with a lot of fluids, a lot of other supplements. We want the carbs to digest quickly so he doesn't get nauseous from the supplements. And we do want to start getting the body hydrated and fueled up and ready to go. So we focus mostly on carbs and protein in the morning. Then the 9 o'clock meal is a blend of carbs, fats, and protein, but way more heavy in carbs and fats. It's a very moderate protein intake at that meal, and we load the carbs and fats much more. Then he's continuing to train clients. And then at 1 o'clock, we have carbs and protein. And we actually just use a simple sugar drink. So Gatorade powder and a whey isolate. And he'll drink that during his workout. Then 3 p.m. post-workout meal, we're going to have carbs and protein. And we want to have the fats low so the carbs and protein can get into the body very quickly to help kind of fulfill the demand and start to recover from the training and start to not only recover, but then hopefully start to build the positive adaptations on top of that. Then at the last meal of the day, we focus on mostly fats and protein. We want the proteins to digest slowly throughout the night. We want enough energy to fuel the process of muscle growth, fuel the process of overall recovery, but it would be better for that energy to come from fat source, so it's a nice slow release of energy rather than carbs, which can be more of like a dumping of energy initially, and then after a few hours, there's kind of nothing in the system. We want them to sleep with something in the system as much as possible, so that way the body's is doing as much recovery, repair, and positive adaptations as possible overnight. So how we have it structured for him is we have 66% of his carb and fat calories before and during the workout. That's within the first 9 hours of the day. Then we only have 33% of his carb and fat calories after the workout, which is the final 7 to 8 hours of the day. So roughly the first half of the day, he's having 66% of his carbs and fats. And then the second half, he's having only 33%. This makes sure that he fuels up and is maximally able to perform during the workout. So if I want to drive my car, I got to put gas in before I drive, not after. We want to do that with the body. We want to put fuel in before we train, not after. So that's the idea of front-loading carbs and fats before the training, so he's maximizing the performance, maximizing the stimulus adaptation demanded and created from the workouts. Then protein, we actually have 50% of his protein before an intra-workout and 50% of his protein after the workout. So it's kind of an even blend. How that actually works out then is it's actually a little bit more heavy of protein into the latter part of the day, since the latter part of the day is a little bit shorter than the first half. So if we look at his carb and fat intake, and we think of like a bell curve if we're tracking when we consume our carbs and fats, his peak of carb and fat intake is before the workout. His peak of protein intake is actually after the workout. By making those adjustments, by front-loading the workouts with good calories for good energy, and then post-loading the workout for good recovery with good protein, those adjustments are going to help him get stronger, grow muscle, and lose body fat. So the best drug for strength and muscle growth is proper nutrition. It's a very boring answer, but it is absolutely 100% the first place that I would look and any coach would look for when they're considering what to adjust for someone to get greater growth, greater adaptations, greater progress than what they're currently getting. You would never, ever, ever prescribe someone a supplement or a drug without first maximizing their nutrition. If anybody ever did that, they're 100% lazy and or uneducated. You want to maximize your nutrition first before you would worry about supplementation. Sometimes supplementation is part of maximizing your nutrition, multivitamin or specific individual supplements like, say, vitamin D3 or fiber or things like that. So supplements can be part of it. But if you're talking about illegal supplements like steroids, no. You absolutely have to and should adjust nutrition first, training as well, and then maximize legal supplementation like creatine and other forms of kind of beneficial. They're maybe not, like creatine is actually really good for overall health too, but you would look at supplements that optimize performance that are legal before you would look at supplements that optimize performance that are illegal. So, I know it's a boring answer. and it took me a long time to give you a boring answer. But I like giving these answers. I don't want to bullshit people. I don't want to make podcasts that are going to hurt people, get people in trouble, or give false hope. 100%, you want to maximize your nutrition first. What you can do to make sure you're doing that is to make sure you're eating enough and that you're eating at the right time. You want to maximize your carb and fat intake pre-workout, maximize your protein intake post-workout. So make those adjustments, make that correction, make sure you look at your nutrition. If you have any questions, reach out. You can reach out on the website, www.brutalirongym.com. You can request a service by going to our 101 services page, or you can just shoot me a message on the bottom of the homepage. There's a contact form. Just let me know what questions you have, what struggles you have, and I'll either help you with the one-on-one service or I'll make a podcast for free. We'll kind of discuss that and make sure you get the depth of help that you need and want. Awesome. So if you reach out, I promise you're going to get something for it. You're going to get some information that you can then take and continue to make progress towards your goals. So if you need anything, let me know. Then if you like a podcast, please share the podcast. The more people we share it with, the more people we can help. Also, if you like the podcast, please consider donating to support the podcast, which you can do on our website. And if you like the information we share in the podcast, you can find more from us on our social media channels. You can find us and follow us on Instagram and YouTube under the name Brutal Iron Gym. As always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening.